March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GL 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Medfield Warrant Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. As a reminder, persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so following the instructions on the agenda and the meeting notice. And this meeting is being recorded for all of your future viewing pleasures. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Ron?
Hello. I guess we could do quickly the minutes that Newton sent around earlier today. Did people have a chance to take a look?
Yep. Looks good.
So if nobody has any comments or questions, does anyone have a motion?
A motion to approve the December 22nd, 2020 minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay. All right. So I will do a roll call. Newton?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yeah.
Amanda?
I was absent.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're absent. So
Yeah.
I'm not. So I'll vote yes. So 5-4, 1 wasn't there, and Christina's missing. It passes. So our one and only super fun agenda item is our friends Christine and Nick to give us an update on the wonderful documents that Nick just emailed.
So we don't have a lot of information to update you, obviously, since we met on December 22nd, but we wanted to check in, wish you a happy new year, talk about a few things. I will tell you that one of the things I did in preparation for meeting tonight was to go back and look at my notes from literally exactly a year ago when we met on January 13th. And we are farther along now than we were on January 13th, but wow, did we have no idea what was coming. It's in looking at my notes, it feels like a year ago and 10 years ago and last week all at the same time. So I'm glad and happy to report that I think we are farther along than we were at this point last year, which is great because one of my things I talked about last year was making sure we were moving along quicker. So we're at least there even in COVID times.
I have to say, I did open up that draft list of warrant articles, and it kind of looked eerily familiar to the last list. And so my comment on that before we get to it is I have no idea which one of us had which one. So when you go through that list and you say, oh, I had that one, shoot me an email and it's yours again. And there we go.
I was thinking you could probably just vote on half of those tonight.
I'm pretty sure we already did. They just need to dust off those minutes.
Yeah. So just to check in with you on a few things, Nick sent you your budget binder by PDF today because 2020 apparently is still hanging around. The actual binders that we purchased for these have not shown up yet. So like my holiday cards, they're probably stuck in Cincinnati for weeks. So we'll keep you updated. And as soon as we get them, we will actually drop them off to you.
I should note that the meeting materials have been posted on the Warrant Committee website for whoever's looking for those. So the packet that we're talking about is online already.
Perfect.
Does that include, will that include the binder itself?
The PDF of the binder is online right now as well.
Okay. Everything that you sent to us is online. Very good, thanks.
So just to review a few things that are in there, and a lot of it is background material for you, historical information, should give you a full picture of where we are on the budget. It's going to give you a historical look back on our state aid, local receipts, other available funds, capital budgets, etc. We've also included a memo on free cash, and we'll be distributing that. You're actually the first committee to see it so far. We'll be distributing that to the school committee and the Board of Selectmen as well. I will let you know that our certified free cash number is $3,357,000, which is significantly higher than we've had in the past. And there's a historical look back at what we've had for free cash. The memo goes into quite a more detail as to why we have such a large amount of free cash. Part of that was when COVID hit in March, we put in a spending freeze. And we had 2 departments who turned back more money than we anticipated based on some personnel decisions that were made. that is, we don't anticipate that happening again. We don't want this to happen again. This is not how we would like to move forward on this, but obviously given what was happening during COVID, we wanted to try and hold on to as much funding as we could because we knew fiscal year 22 would be worse than fiscal year 21. So review that memo. If you have any questions, please let us know. I would like to take the opportunity that I would like to be very careful in how we use that free cash money this year. As you'll remember, we were close to $800,000 just to offset the operating budget last year. That's not how we want to move forward with our free cash. We should not be using it to offset the budget in violation of our financial policy, which is what we did last year. So again, overall, I don't have too much to update you. Since we met last, we are still waiting for, obviously, the governor's budget, which should be released the 3rd week of January. I'm told from an inside source at the State House today. She might be giving a state of the town address at the end of the month if you'd like to attend. We're also waiting to see what our stimulus money will be for the schools. And there is also talk about whether or not additional stimulus money will be available for cities and towns once the new administration takes over. So we're waiting to hear all of that. In addition, we're waiting to hear our numbers on retirement, health insurance, unemployment, all of that. So we've updated the budget worksheet. I would point you to, when you look at the Google Doc spreadsheet, I would point you to the notes section. So any line item where there's a question, there's an estimate, there's an assumption made on that. Nick has included a note on there. So if there are any questions, please let us know. I don't want anybody to panic yet. This is a preliminary budget. It's January. But when you look at that budget worksheet, you are going to see a $2.3 million deficit. So don't panic yet. I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned. We're very concerned. And I think we continue to have structural issues with our budget, but we still have so many estimates in what we've given you today that I want everybody to just not panic. How many times can I say that? Don't panic.
Will you tell
We're
us
not
when you
panic.
should panic?
I will.
There you go.
I will
Good
definitely
question,
tell you when it's
All
time
right,
to
thank
panic.
you. All
No,
right,
not tonight.
we'll await your signal. Thank you.
we
look
need a
like
little
this.
bat. We need a little like panic button bat signal kind of
Yes,
thing coming
I
off
will.
the
You
town
will be able
hall.
to tell from my face when it is time to panic.
Okay, we're not panicking yet.
I'm not panicking yet,
Not for another week.
Okay.
but I'm not saying I'm not incredibly concerned. I'm very,
Okay.
very concerned, but I want to wait until we get a little more information before we make any dire decisions. And like I said, we're waiting for retirement, health insurance, unemployment. We're level funding our state aid from last year, so we're carrying that. We don't know what the governor is going to do. So I will tell you a couple things to keep in the back of your mind as you're reviewing this budget. We have included a 2% COLA for our non-union employees and a 2% merit for the non-managerial. I feel very strongly that given that the non-union employees took a 0% last year, that we have to do something in the budget. I don't have a vote from the personnel board or the board of selectmen yet. However, I have carried and asked the financial team to put the 2% in there. So that's in there from the beginning. I think that's part of why it was easy to cut last year, is because we did not start with that at the beginning. Overall, our town operating budgets reflect a 2% increase. The operating budgets themselves are actually only up 0.6. We did not replace any of the positions that were cut in the fiscal year 21 budget. However, between the COLA being included this year, and I've also put in funding for a full-time public health nurse. I don't need to explain to you how desperate we need that. That has pushed us up to a 2.6% increase. When reviewing the budget, you will also see that we've included information and money for the funding of a capital budget, and that's in your budget binder as well. Our intention at this time with the capital budget committee, as we talked about in December, we are planning on funding that through the tax levy and or free cash. One of the things the capital budget committee has talked about is involving the creation of the capital and debt stabilization fund that we talked about last year. However, we would start that fund off this year through the operating budget and free cash versus going for an override. I don't think anybody on the Warrant committee or the capital budget committee wants to go for an override on the capital budget this year. It's just not the time. We've included the school department budget in here with the last estimate, but as Jeff stated at the last meeting, their budgets are moving depending on whether or not they're planning for a COVID return to school, non-COVID return to school. I know the capital budget committee had some discussions about some Chromebooks, which ultimately may change what their bottom line budget was that they presented at their initial meeting. And I know their budget hearing is coming up this month as well. So it's just a warning that all of these numbers are still evolving and changing as we go forward. I will caution you when you're reading this that that $2.3 million deficit that we're not panicking about yet does not include police and fire contracts. We are still in collective bargaining. There have been some discussions as to why we don't anticipate what those costs are and put them in the budget. And I would tell you that our operating budgets are small enough that if I put a large amount of money, even a small amount of money in the budget, you're going to see a significant increase. And for us on the town side, that tips my hand in
Negotiations. Yeah.
So, whether or not we change that going in forward in the past, it's just been too easy for people to figure out what money would be available and what we're talking about at collective bargaining. So we don't do that until the end. As Sharon mentioned, I did include a draft listing of 38 warrant articles. They will look very familiar to you. I think over half of them, 3/4 of them you saw last year. The warrant officially opens on January 19th. So the selectmen haven't seen this draft yet. I will present that on the 19th. And it's my intention that the warrant will close on February 16th. So we'll leave it open for a month. And I'll keep you updated as we add or subtract articles to that. Nick and I reviewed it briefly today. There are some warrant articles that may, for example, creating the capital and debt stabilization fund. That may require 2 additional articles to be included with that. So you may see some increase, decrease in those areas. So I think at this point, I don't really have a lot of information for you other than what we've given you. I think our next steps for the financial team, we're anxiously awaiting all of the updates I mentioned earlier. We'll continue to update that Google spreadsheet and meet with you and talk to you about it. We are going to continue to refine our local receipt estimates. Obviously, with the rollout of the vaccine, we're hoping for a more optimistic fiscal year 22 look. So we'll continue to look at that and continue to look at what our meals tax is that's coming in. I think for the warrant committee, your next steps are to start to meet with your department heads. And Nick's included all of the budgets and their historical budgets for you to start reviewing that with them. And then I was going to say, Sharon, if you're ready to reassign the warrant articles, we can start working on those.
Yeah.
I did have a chance to talk to Scott this week, and at this time, we are planning on moving forward with an outdoor town meeting on May 4th. And we will plan on doing that.
Can we have it Star Wars themed?
Sure.
Get it?
I know. I'll let you design the cover.
Okay.
Right now, we don't see any at this point, January, I think I said this last year, we don't see any reason why we would move that date at this point. We think we can move forward with good enough data to be able to hold that May 4th deadline. So I'll start sending out to you. I would anticipate all of it will occur in March, but we'll have the warrant hearing, our warrant report deadline, all of that will start coming up in March. So I know it's only January, but March is really right around the corner. And I'd like to start getting moving on it as quickly as possible, knowing that I just told you I don't have half of the information to give you to fill in those budgets. So, but we're anticipating by the end of January, a lot of that information will start to come in.
Cool. So I guess I have a logistical question. So
I misspoke. It is not May 4th. It is May 3rd. Jess Riley is correct. That is Monday. So thanks,
there were
Jess.
so many fun things that we could have done.
More Star Wars. Sorry, May 3rd.
Oh, well. Can I hope for a rain date?
Yes, there you go. Now it's back.
Okay.
Back on the
All
table,
right.
Jess.
All right. So normally
Yep.
we have, everybody goes and talks to their folks, and then we bring everybody in kind of one after another.
Yep.
Which we certainly can do that. We're going to need to start meeting weekly, especially in February, I think, to make that happen. do you have any advice for all of us? Because now, as I just go down this list, I can pick the 5 probably that had positive numbers. So obviously those people should come in because they asked for more than 0. But all of the ones that are asking for 0, am I correct to assume that people's missions are to go back and talk to them and find out if they're really 0 or if they have the ability to go backwards? Or do you feel like you've already done that with people?
No, when we met with them, the anticipation was completely level funded budget. And as we reviewed their budgets with them, they're prepared. They were advised to start to prepare what their budget cuts would need to be if we needed to move forward with that.
So I kind of feel like in the interest of time, we almost jump to that, and then that way we at least know what that is. Because I don't want to kind of have people come back and be like, yeah, they need all of this, and then in 3 weeks tell everybody to go back and say, what can they cut? I think I'd rather know up front what we have for room, because I know we're not freaking out about the negative 2.3, but I'm
concerned.
we're not freaking, but I'm also not really believing that you're going to come up with all of that on the income side either.
Exactly. And I don't think I'm going to find 2.3 million when, we find out the results of our health insurance unemployment. I'm not going to find that kind of money. It's not what we're talking about.
I mean, and I can be hopeful that maybe there's something in a stimulus package that can help with a public health nurse. And maybe, we can talk about using, I don't know, just throwing it out there, like $500,000 towards capital or something. But neither of those things solve the problems completely. They help if people decide to make those decisions. But it kind of looks like to me we at least need to start bringing some ideas to the table, whether or not they come to fruition, but at least an understanding of what it does to programs and people if we have to make those decisions. Kind of like what we did last year, again.
So let me try and dumb that down for me. So when we contact our department heads and we see their plan, are you saying that part of that conversation would be what if we needed to?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Because I feel like we're going to get there, because even though we're not panicking, I'm not a true believer that we're going to be able to solve the full 2.3 million. Let's say that a few grandiose, wonderful things happen and we can solve 1.3 million of that, or maybe 1.5 million of that. That still leaves us with an $800,000 problem.
So Christine, in that context, what would be the expectation, or what kind of expected response can we anticipate in that? I mean, has the discussion been we're zero funded, or we're level funded and blank, and this is where we are, but be aware that this may not be the last go around, and therefore when you have your conversations with the warrant committee, it will come up. It's just anticipate that. I mean, I'm just trying to see from your perspective how that's been laid out.
That's exactly how I communicated that to them. Obviously, we experienced pushback when Nick and I were talking to them, and you're going to experience pushback from them. We took a 3.98% decrease in the town budgets last year. That wasn't from what we requested. That was from our budget the prior year. We're operating on 2017 levels in terms of budgeting. So going back for additional cuts this year is going to be difficult, especially after cutting the positions last year. When you're talking cuts this year, you're talking about programs and you're talking about people.
And so having that conversation, and again, in that responsible manner, saying, we need to at least probe this programs and people just as a confidential discussion, not something that it's going to be documented, because again, I'm trying to work through in my head how that conversation develops. It still comes down to, a presentation before the warrant committee by the department heads ultimately, where their number will be advocated, right? For lack of a better term.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem broaching that topic, but I just want to make sure that it's not like, where the hell's this guy coming from? We got one up.
No, it won't be a surprise. We asked them when they presented their budget to us to start looking at places which, where they would be able to cut if it came to that. We knew this year was going to be difficult. So we started warning of, people back before we even finished town meeting, we were warning people about fiscal year 22. So they're prepared to have those discussions with you. I don't think they're going to be pleasant discussions.
No, of course not. But and I guess the other piece of it is, to what extent are departments, in your conversation with you and Nick and your team talk with these department heads, for example, specifically, how is the free cash addressed? And how, I mean, is it understood that this is money that's really it's as fixed in place as a department would be, in terms of that perspective, I mean, this isn't just a rainy day fund, I guess is my point. Is that understood in the context, or is that something that's a negotiation, or?
I think you're talking about in terms of department heads understanding where that is.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody comes back and says, well, we do have this free cash. I mean, I'm sure you've had that conversation, right? Or have you?
I think you're absolutely going to hear that, which is why we prepared this free cash budget to have that discussion.
Okay. I'm fine to have that conversation too, but I think having that preempted is great.
Yep. Nope. And they'll have a copy of that before they meet with you. And, I think since I've taken over, I've been stressing the selectmen's financial policy and how important it was to build up our reserves so that we could weather a storm. And unfortunately, we were probably 2 years away from being able to manage COVID without having, or even taking the reductions we had last year. So I think everybody understands now how important it is to build up those reserves to have that money on hand. I think we got into trouble spending the free cash that we spent in the last 5 years. I think that's, it was necessary at the time, and we believed it was important to spend the money on what we did, but we were ignoring what was coming down the road. And this is where I will caution everybody again, that next year, fiscal year 23, is when we lose that last $1 million of the MSBA money. So next year is when I'm going to ask you to panic on January of 22, because, we don't have that $1 million of revenue on the revenue side. So I'm concerned about that looking ahead.
All right, I get one more question in terms of what's been discussed, or in terms of the money that, which we have, the money that the state had in excess of what we had budgeted. Mm-hmm. And how, and where we are right now in terms of holding it in abeyance until the end of the year with the allocation, whatever. Has there been a discussion with department heads as to how that's allocated, where that goes, and is that understood, or has that ever come up, or?
I don't know if we've discussed that with them directly. I know some of them were in attendance when we had the school committee and the board of selectmen and the warrant committee meeting. I think the understanding is that money will be used for any COVID shortfalls at the end of the year in the budget. That was the discussion at that time.
So it's understood to be COVID related, not again, a cash available piece. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm curious, in the budget book, is there an analysis of stabilization sort of funds and the history and the balances for us in there?
I don't think we have it in there, but we can include that.
And the reason I'm curious is that, at some point we probably want to be ahead of and have proposed uses for the free cash. And I think, we've certainly talked a lot about the need for stabilization and in light of building projects coming up and the like. And, maybe your memo might evolve into having that formal recommendation at some point.
Yeah, I think you got a preview tonight of what my recommendation would be in using some of that.
Is that in the memorandum?
It's not in the memo where, well, briefly at the end, yes, but not a strong recommendation as to where I think we should spend it.
Okay.
And we do have that in progress, Jeremy. It's just not finalized and signed off by our team. So we should have that within a week, I'd say, for everybody. We had it last year, it just needs to be updated and refreshed and everything.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks, Nick.
So I have a question regarding capital budget. Should we expect any pushback from department heads as to what is being funded in capital, or what may have been excluded, or has that been pretty well worked out in the capital budgeting committee that and the department heads reconcile to the list of $2 million or so of capital items that you shared with us last meeting? Is there any variability or any expectation of changes to that?
I don't think so. I would defer to Nick and Sharon on that, but I don't think that, I don't anticipate any pushback at this point.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's a
I defer
robust
to
list,
Nick.
I think.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay.
part
People are
of pursuing what is on there is the goal of capturing some of our, deferred needs. So I think folks are happy with that list. If we start cutting things away, I think that's when it becomes difficult. There might be a couple things that might be easier to take than others, but
I think overall the department heads have been happier with our approach to capital and how we're doing it. Instead of them wheeling and dealing behind the scenes of, well, there's only 250,000. If you take a truck next year, I can get these radios this year. We're taking a more professional approach to capital, and I think they appreciate that.
So Nick, on your schedule or the finance schedule, there was the impact of 730,000 or so on the operating budget as a result of capital charges. And that presumes some debt financing, some lease financing, and some purchase, et cetera, and some existing leases. Any movement there to be expected?
so as on the capital budget sheet, it shows what the estimates were. So that's a hopefully conservative interest rate. So ideally those would go down as we get closer and are more comfortable with where the interest rate environment we expect it to be by the time we get to July or August. So hopefully I was shooting for a more conservative number. So that should be kind of a high level rather than something that would maybe go up over time. In theory, that should, knock on wood, come down as we get closer and able to refine those numbers.
Mm-hmm. I think last meeting, Bob asked for, in due course, a sensitivity analysis on leasing versus debt financing. Was that your request, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah, that's a good term, right? Good
So
banking
it kind of
term. Good
depends on the
banking term,
equipment, but
right?
I can,
You said incremental analysis, but
sure, I can have something for you folks and I'll follow up with the two of you on it.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, basically just the idea of a range of, relative incremental costs that we are doing based upon this approach.
Sure.
I'm not sure what you're asking for, Bob. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, well, the leasing
Right.
approach has a higher cost than we would have, has a cost, and then the capital, funding would be, it has a cost. And I'm looking for what the gap between the two is in a relative range.
Okay.
That make sense?
So if you can borrow at 2% and your lease is at 4%, the 2% is your difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So just maybe just multiply the number times 2%.
Nick, this may be too fine a point at this point, but the leases, what happens at the end of the term? Are there fair market value buyouts or?
They're owned at the end of the term.
Okay.
It's a lease to own.
Very good. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody have any other, I mean, so do we think that, I guess my question is, I know are we still hoping that capital is gonna meet again soon? Like, do we think, because remind me, I'm not sure we've shown capital all of the leasing numbers that Nick came up with. I feel like the last capital meeting was Nick was gonna get those. Is that right, or am I remembering wrong?
I think
It's all
we,
smushing together.
I think we presented all of that.
Okay.
You were there.
I know, I told you, it's all smushing together. This meeting and the capital meeting are smushing together.
Sharon, for the sake of the notes, I missed all that. Was there anything that should be committed to notes or minutes?
No. I guess right now what I'm trying to figure out is when we should meet next and because I want to give you guys time to reach out to your department heads, assuming people haven't started to do that yet since before this meeting. So I had initially just said in my note reminder about this one that we would hold the 26th as our next meeting, which would be 2 weeks from today.
26th.
So I guess one of my questions to Christine and Nick, is there any reason why you think we need to meet next week, or should we do 2 weeks thinking whether or not we need to meet with capital again between now and then, if that's necessary? Because capital hasn't voted yet, I guess is my point, right? And so I don't know if we are at a point that we want to ask capital to vote yet, or if we want to get further along in the budget process to figure out how much we're advising the capital committee that we need to cut back from that $730,000 number.
I would think we need to get a little more information before we have capital take that vote. That would be my thinking on that off the top of my head. I think we need to wait. But I will tell you, my plan of having the warrant committee meet on Tuesdays is just being ruined by the Board of Selectmen, who are now meeting on January 26th as well. So.
Well, I was going to say I'm fine if we want to go back to Mondays. I know I complain about the fact that I hate to have meetings on Mondays, but you know what? It's a pandemic and I'm not doing anything any night of the week, so I guess it kind of really doesn't matter. So I know Christine has a conflict again on the 26th. So I think that if everybody is free on the Mondays, we could meet on the 25th, and then at least from the 25th, February 1st, February 8th, we could do Mondays, and then we can't meet on the 15th because that's President's Day. But we could reassess after those 3 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work for people?
Yes.
And then how about between now and the 25th, each of you can individually email me and let me know whether or not you are ready to talk about any of your departments at any of those meetings. Yeah.
You have all the department budgets covered, knowing that we're down a few members from last go around?
I did, because some were like Newton took DPW. I need to pull up my list, but you know what? I'll recirculate the list that I had done a few
Please.
weeks ago. It was probably 2 months ago at this point. I'll recirculate the list. Basically, everybody had what they had before, with the exception that Newton took over the DPW. And I was going to do Mike's because I didn't have any budgets last year because I was the director of numbers, super fancy title. So I was going to take Mike's, and basically Newton took Joanna's, and then Ed took schools that I said that Newton and I would still help him on. And so I think that if everybody does theirs, that should cover it. And so I'll dig up what I have for notes on who had what for the warrant last year, and just kind of reassign those. I did have a quick conversation with Christine, and she had said that she would take any of the ones that end up popping up that have to do with the zoning and property stuff, because I saw there was a zoning meeting that was happening. So she said she would take all of those that come up. And if anybody sees any on the draft list that tickle your fancy, you can email me that too. But why don't we plan to just do that? So we'll start January 25th, and then I'll leave it up to each of you to decide whether or not you think you can represent your department head, or whether or not they want to come. And then you just let me know what will work for you and the department head, and we'll just build a schedule off of that and get it posted in the agendas.
Sounds good.
All right.
Good.
Sounds good.
So
You guys
we're
have
off
anything-
and running.
Oh, do you guys have anything else?
I think I'm good.
All right. It's 7:36. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
This won't happen again, because now I'm going to start to get more and more concerned. So it won't
Motion.
happen again.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Newton,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So unfortunately, this may be the last of our